Right, I'm running the recorder, so... Well, I can't hear your voices. Yeah, I guess I'm gonna drop out the call. So, laters. Okay, we're just waiting for the game to start here. Phil has loaded up his deck, and we're in. 20 life, 40 cards in the deck. Welcome to what seems to be a very exciting edition of whatever the hell tournament that this is. This is an Odyssey League, a sealed Odyssey League. What we do is we have little trades between each match. So it's kind of a nice cross between sealed and constructed. Notice they have drawn their hands. Phil here. Nope, that's James Protagoras at the top. Seems to be playing blue-red, Violent Eruption, Island, Mountain, Aquamoeba, Standstill, Peak. Whether he'll keep that is yet to be decided. Phil has taken a what we call a Friends Mulligan, which is if you don't have enough lands or you have too many, and we have a particular number for that, then you can go. He seems to be playing first, and he's dropped a Plains and passed the turn to James, who has just drawn an Arcane Teachings there, which you can read on the right. James puts an island into play, passes over to Phil, who draws a Basking Root Wall, a very powerful card. Very good card. Is he going to play it right now? What else could he play? Angelic Wall, perhaps? Phil's making a decision, puts the forest in, taps it, plays the Root Waller. Ends his turn. Passes over. Oh, James is doing something. James plays a Peak at the end of Phil's turn, gets to look at his hand, and gets to draw a card. He will see this Second Thoughts. That's very important. Second Thoughts is a card that you use to surprise someone, but now James knows it's coming. Angel of Retribution, Hallowed Healer, a prevent 2 damage. Quite a powerful effect in Odyssey, actually, these damage prevention things. Angelic Wall and a Plains. So he knows that Phil's land base is running out. Now what's happening? He's drawing, they haven't switched over. He did draw a Swirling Sandstorm. That was from the Peak, and now he draws a Dream Winder, a 4/3. Can't attack unless defending player controls an island. Taps an island and a mountain, probably to play his Aquamoeba. Yep, there we go, a 1/3. Discard a card from your hand, switch its power and toughness until end of turn. So it's a 1/3, but you can switch it to a 3/1 as you desire. Phil here draws a Diligent Farmhand. Sacrifice it, search your library for a basic land card, put it into play tapped. A good piece of fixing, makes up for the fact he's only got 1 Plains left in hand. Also counts as a Muscle Burst in the graveyard, if it's in the graveyard. Now what's Phil going to do here? Is he going to drop the Plains, play the Angelic Wall and the Diligent Farmhand? He plays the Angelic Wall, taps the forest. Yes, as predicted, puts the farmhand into play and ends his turn. Doesn't leave mana up to fight the Aquamoeba with the Basking Root Waller, which is an interesting choice, but you can always block it with the Angelic Wall, so I guess it's not a problem. James untaps, doesn't draw anything, draws a Scalp Alexis, a very powerful card in Limited. Has the ability just on its own to wreck someone's deck. Just shred it. So we'll see what happens. He's going to put the mountain in. Probably a good idea. James is known for thinking hard on his decisions, and it often pays off well for him. One of our stronger players here in our league. Is he going to put this mountain into play? In his hand he has a Standstill, Violent Eruption, which allows him to divide 4 damage. Taps 3, plays an Arcane Teachings, enchants a creature. Enchanted creature gets +2/+2, and a Ping ability, which he puts on his Aquamoeba, turning it into a 3/5. Which he then taps to shoot the Diligent Farmhand with the Ping ability, putting it in the graveyard, and he ends his turn. James now wide open to a Stomping from the Root Waller. Destroy target attacking creature. Phil draws, but he doesn't have the land for it. In fact, Phil only has the land for a Hallowed Healer. He attacks with the Root Waller. James can't block. Pays the 2 and pumps it. Can I draw arrows? No, I can't. James goes down to 17. Phil ends his turn. The Angelic Wall still in place for him. James can discard a card on the attack with the Aquamoeba to be able to kill the Angelic Wall. Looks like he taps the Aquamoeba to destroy the Basking Root Waller with its ping ability. Then he taps an island and a mountain. This might be standstill. I'd imagine this is going to be standstill. He's in a good position. Yes, standstill. Right. James is in a strong position, so he plays his standstill, which means that Phil probably can't do anything if he doesn't want James to draw cards. Draws the planes that he needs for his chastise. Puts the planes into play. Does he play his Hallowed Healer, or does he end his turn? He ends his turn. Passes over to James, who draws a mountain that he needs. He can play his Violent Eruption now. Will he do it? No. On the Angelic Wall? Probably not, because there's standstill. He might go on the attack with the Aquamoeba here. Now, we have no way of telling if that's an attack or if that's using the ping ability, because the players are talking to each other on Skype. So I guess we'll find out. Blocks with the Angelic Wall. James discards the Dreamwinder, switching the Aquamoeba's power and toughness. It's a 5-3 now. Phil plays Chastise, which triggers the standstill. But it does mean the Aquamoeba is destroyed along with the Arcane Teachings. And Phil gains 5 life. James draws Island, Mountain, Fiery Temper. And the Arcane Teachings goes into the graveyard. And the standstill. Interesting turn. James has to find a way to get around this Angelic Wall now. I imagine it will involve a Violent Eruption. But will he do it before he can play his Scalpel Exes? He knows Second Thoughts is just sitting in hand. He's seen the Second Thoughts. And he knows Angel of Retribution potentially on its way. 5-5 flying first strike. What's the decision here? Straight up ends his turn. Phil draws a Spellbane Centaur. Creatures you control can't be the targets of blue spells or abilities from blue sources. A 3-2 for 3. A good creature. Can't tell why he hasn't played it. But he passes the turn anyway. James draws a mountain. Pops an island into play. He now has enough mana online for the Scalpel Exes. Will he remember the Second Thoughts? Taps 5. Puts the Scalpel Exes into play. Ends his turn. Phil's turn. Draws a planes. Probably puts it straight into play. Yep. Planes comes in. 5 lands online. Will he play the Spellbane Centaur? Or is he keeping mana open for Second Thoughts? That'll be why James played the Second Thoughts. Because Phil didn't have the mana at the time. Taps 3. Hallowed Healer comes in. I just have to close my Facebook. There we go. Those noises shan't be annoying us anymore. Ether Burst in hand. Will he play Violent Eruption on the Angelic Wall and attack with the Scalpel Exes? That would be my move. But the Hallowed Healer can prevent the damage. Swings in. Blocks with the Angelic Wall. Taps the 4. Final Interruption. Hallowed Healer just came in last turn, so it can't prevent this damage. I would have done that beforehand. Hallowed Healer has gone from the table to the graveyard. Ah, that's what he's done. He's blocked with 1, so he can use the Violent Interruption for a 2 for 1. So he splits the damage 3 on the wall, if we open up the graveyard here. Angelic Wall 0-4. And Hallowed Healer is a 1-1, so he's done 1 damage with the Scalp Alexis to the Angelic Wall, then done 3 to it, and 1 to the Hallowed Healer, getting a nice little 2 for 1 there. Open board. Second Thoughts online. Ether Burst. 2 copies in hand. Dare he attack? He does. Taps out. Second Thoughts. Oh. Taps 2. Ether Burst. Returns the Scalp Alexis to his hand. Very good play. Second Thoughts doesn't have a valid target. Probably in comes the Scalp Alexis again. That's the power of blue mana, ladies and gentlemen. That's the power of blue mana. Ends the turn. Passes to Phil. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Not enough for the Angel of Retribution, but enough for a Spellbane Centaur, which Phil seems reluctant to play. Plays the Centaur. 3-2. James draws an island. Will he play it? See, at this point, you maybe might not want to play it. He's got 8 now. Attacks with the Scalp Alexis. Scalp Alexis hits. Drops his life by 1. Werebear, Forest, Forest, Forest. Does it again, because 2 of them had the same name. They do not have the same name, so they get exiled. So does the Werebear and the Forests. They also get exiled. Fill with 17 lands left in hand. Lands left in hand, cards are left in the library. This is what Scalp Alexis does, for those that didn't understand what just happened. Whenever Scalp Alexis deals combat damage to a player, that player removes the top 4 cards of his or her library from the game. If 2 or more of those cards have the same name, repeat this process. Phil just activated his Krosan Verge there. For a Forest and a Plains card. So, what are we seeing here? It's the Mystic Zealot coming in. Threshold is online. So, Mystic Zealot is a 3-5 with flying. Now, what's James going to do about this 3-5 with flying? He can't use the Ether Burst because the Spellbane Centaur is online. He might use the Fiery Temper to destroy the Spellbane Centaur. And then use the Ether Burst on the Mystic Zealot. But what James is looking for here is a way in with the Scalp Alexis. He can potentially win via a mulligan here. Not mulligan, what am I talking about? Via milling him out. If the player can't draw a card from his library when he needs to, then they've lost the game. Ending phase. Passes to Phil. Untap. Forest drawn. Forest comes in. Will we see the Angel? Or an attack from the Mystic Zealot? Could potentially sudden strength the Mystic Zealot, kill the Scalp Alexis. Angel of Retribution brought in, flying first strike. James's options kind of running out here. He could still Fiery Temper the Spellbane Centaur, Ether Burst, Angel of Retribution, Mystic Zealot. Draws a Breakthrough. He could break through for a lot here. What line will he take? Taps 4. Swirling Sandstorm. 5 damage to each creature without flying. That's the Spellbane Centaur in the graveyard. Cast Ether Burst, targeting Mystic Zealot, Angel of Retribution most likely, back to his hand. Scalpelexis comes in, hits for 1 life. None of them have the same name, it's just a mill of 4. Phil with 9 draws remaining, both players on high life points, Phil on 24, James on 17, not much damage. Phil should have gone down to 23 there. The wrong life total is being used. Playing a Nantuko Disciple and the Mystic Zealot, 3-5. Swirling Sandstorm again. He could Sandstorm the Disciple. Now might be a good time for that breakthrough. The Fiery Temper could also hit the Disciple. Could leave the Scalpelexis up. Interesting to consider the lines he could take. Breakthrough. 4-7 is possible. Could straight just draw 4 cards. Blue 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This would allow him to discard the Fiery Temper and play its Madness cost for cheap. Discards the Fiery Temper, taps 1 for Madness, 3 damage to the Nantuko Disciple. Disciple's out, Fiery Temple goes in the graveyard. What did he draw? Peak. Could still play it. Probably going to play it at the end of Phil's turn. Phil draws Prismatic Strands. Prevent all damage that sources of the colour of your choice would deal this turn. Attacks with the Mystic Zealot. James likely just to take 3 here. Plays the Peak. Looks at his hand. Prismatic Strands, Sudden Strength, Angel of Retribution. All Phil's surprises out the window. James draws the Hydromorph Gull. A 3-3 flyer, you can sacrifice it, allows you to counterspell that targets 1 or more creatures you control. James takes 3 life. Phil ends his turn. He's got the Angel of Retribution. He left the mana up. He didn't want to play it. Interesting. Cephalid Scout. 1/1 flyer. Sacrifice a land, draw a card. A Cephalid Wizard. Phil likely leaving mana up for Prismatic Strands to stop the Scalpelexis from scalpelizing him. James probably just going to make the attack anyway. Another move could have been to play the Angel of Retribution, which also would have stopped the Scalpel Exis. But Phil doesn't know the kind of removal that James has in his hand. Perhaps a creature not the best. A spell likely the better choice at the moment. Two blue is tapped, and another, and a fourth, and a fifth. Is this the Hydromorph? Hydromorph Girl is played. Now, this is likely on purpose to try and prevent any damage to the Scalpel Exis. Scalpel Exis comes in. Prismatic Strands is played, with blue chosen, most likely. The damage is prevented. Phil is saved from being scalpelized for a turn. Now, Scalpel Exis, Prismatic Strands there also has a flashback. Tap an untapped white creature you control. That's probably going to be the Angel of Retribution. Or you can leave the Mystic Zealot up. Green, green, white, white. Not white, that one, that's 5. Grisly Fate. Put 2/2 green bear creature tokens into play. But it's got threshold, so instead put 4 2/2 green bear creature tokens into play. 4 bears coming in. That's a lot of bears. What a grisly fate. Phil spreads his bears. What a bear spreader. Now Phil leaves his white creature untapped for the flashback on the Prismatic Strands. There. Oh, notice here on the right, this is where you can see the card, if you need to read it. Phil taking a long time to end his turn. Perhaps James is deciding on something. Cunning Wish, perhaps? He can take things out of his sideboard, reveal it and put it into his hand. Might be an Ether Burst. Plays the Cunning Wish. What's the card that's going to be revealed and put in his hand? Time will tell, ladies and gentlemen. In the meantime, let's have a look at this board state. Protagoras, James on 14, Phil on 23, but with 6 cards left in his deck. Phil has 6 turns to close this game, otherwise he loses. James now having to fend off a 3/5 flyer, and these bears. These bears could become 8 bears very shortly. What can James bring in to try and prevent this? He has in hand Swirling Sandstorm. He can deal 5 damage to each creature without flying. He could play that in his turn to try and bait out the Prismatic Strands, leaving Phil relatively open to removal. Allowing James to fly in with the Scalpel Exis. If he doesn't prevent the red damage from the Swirling Sandstorm, oh, in comes Thermal Blast. 5 damage to a creature because of Threshold. That's a lot of power. A lot of power on the board. He could... What could he do here? Thermal Blast the Mystic Zealot. Then after that, he could Ether Burst it instead. James with a lot of options on board. Is he going to try an Ether Burst to start? Or Swirling Sandstorm? Thermal Blast? So many options. Taps. 5 land. Thermal Blast. Onto the Mystic Zealot. Not enough mana on board for the Sudden Strength. Mystic Zealot goes to the graveyard. So does Thermal Blast. Will the Scalpelexis fly in at this point? In comes the Scalpelexis. Phil goes 22. 1, 2, 3, 4. The process isn't going to be repeated. Phil has left 2 cards in deck. Is he going to concede at this point? It's not looking good. What can Phil do or draw with the bears? James taps out. Swirling Sandstorm. Bears are destroyed. Ouch. Here comes Phil. Draws a Plains. Needs to play that Angel of Retribution. Here comes the Angel. It's not. Is it going to save him? Unlikely. Unlikely. He has 1 more turn. James sitting pretty with an Ether Burst. Drops an island in. Ether Burst. And Phil has conceded that game. First win goes to James. Pretty exciting. Pretty exciting. We saw there Scalpelexis doing most of the work. An interesting second win condition. Phil's life gain that he gained from one of his spells made completely irrelevant by being milled out by the Scalpelexis. Like I said, a very powerful card in Limited, a very powerful card in any format, really. But if you can get it to hit, like how James was doing, then it just becomes deadly. And we saw that in that game play out right there. So we're just waiting for the players to start the next game. Phil having the choice to draw or to play first, having lost. Probably going to go first, I would imagine. We're seeing James's deck there with a lot of control, a lot of burn, a lot of bounce. Also in that game we saw probably the secondary usage of bounce, which is to protect your own things, which isn't often seen. Now, players draw their opening hands. Phil draws Forest, Hallowed Healer, Forest, Plains, Angel, Blessed Orator, Spellbane Centaur. Not a bad first hand. James draws Aquamoeba, Breakthrough, Island, 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 Cunning Wish, Mountain. Phil plays the Forest. Ends his turn, both players deciding to keep. James draws a Mountain. Mountain comes into play. Ends his turn. Passes to Phil. Phil draws a Plains. Plays the Plains. Passes the turn. James draws Violent Eruption, drops an island into play, taps them both. In comes the Aquamoeba. Ends his turn. Phil draws Croissant Verge. What's he going to do? Does he play the Verge? Does he play the Spellbane Centaur? He can do both. Plays the Croissant Verge. Enters the battlefield tapped. Oh, we can't do both because it comes in tapped. Ah, there we go. Puts it back in his hand. Oops, made a mistake. Plays the Plains. He wants to play this Centaur, ladies and gentlemen. Taps it. Hallowed Healer. I made a mistake. Brings the healer in. Good choice, good choice. Solid card. Ends his turn. James here with a turn to spare as Hallowed Healer overcomes its summoning sickness. Draws an island. Violent Eruption requiring 3 mountains, so probably a good idea to get your mountains online. Attacks with the Aquamoeba. James takes 1. Sorry, Phil takes 1 there, going down to 19. Now notice James could have discarded the Violent Eruption to play for its madness cost to destroy the Hallowed Healer. Chooses not to. Phil puts a forest into play from his hand. Now with 4 online. Might he play the Blessed Orator? Sorry, excuse me. Yes, he does. One, 2, and a 1, 5. Just doing a bit of a rules correction there. Blessed Orator should have been a 1, 4. Dreamwinder comes into play. 4, 3. Can't attack unless defending player controls an island. A good little defender. Anoid Swarm Snapper. Can block as though it had flying. Can block additional creatures. Puts the planes into play. Puts the Crosan Verge into play tapped. Taking the planes back. That's the nice thing about a casual tournament, is you have the capacity to do that. What are we seeing come in? In comes the Spellbane Centaur. 3-2 for 3, no laughing matter. Now a 3-3 for 3, preventing creatures that Phil controls being the targets of blue spells or abilities from blue sources. Island comes in. What's the move? James still with the possibility to already play the Violent Eruption through its madness cost. Is it worth destroying the Orator with all 4 points of damage to depower the others? Hallowed Healer is online. Can prevent 2 damage. Very annoying. In comes the Dreamwinder. Damage prevention ability is very powerful in this format. Chastise is drawn. Destroy target attacking creature, you gain life equal to its power. Now the only thing that can attack currently is the Aquamoeba. And Urid Swarm Snapper comes in. A 1-4 reach. You can pay to block additional creatures. Phil ends his turn. Are we seeing the beginnings of a game of attrition here? Scalpelexis has been drawn. Apologise for my silence. I know you want my commentary. So, what's going to happen here? Phil can prevent 2 damage at any time. Phil taps the Crescent Verge. I have no idea what's going on. All 4 points of damage shot at the Hallowed Healer. Why was there a diligent farmhand? Does anyone know? What has happened there? Hallowed Healer has been taken down. Probably the best move. Testament of Faith. Angel of Retribution played 5/5. Big creature. Big creature. Flying first strike. Could easily take down anything James has to offer. Could easily fly over them. Can James deal with this 5/6, or are we going to see Game 2 go to Phil? Firebolt. 2 damage to target creature or player with a high flashback cost. Enough mana on board to play both Firebolts. Might aim for the Spellbane Centaur. That would then allow any bounce or blue removal to be played on the Angel of Retribution, currently protected by the Spellbane Centaur. What's the line that's going to be taken? Breakthrough, also available, 4/5. Could straight up just play the Scalpel Exis. I guess we're going to see. In comes the Mountain, Firebolt. Don't know what it's targeting, can't see the arrows. Flashes it back. What's he destroying? Blessed Orator. Interesting choice. I would have gone for the Centaur. So, everything is depowered by 1 toughness. Angel of Retribution is a 5/5. Spellbane Centaur becomes a 3/2. Anoid Swarm Snapper a 1/4. Terror's Faithful. A 1/4 for 4. When it comes into play, you gain 4 life. Angel of Retribution on the attack. James takes 5. 3 more hits until James loses. Plains is tapped. Testament of Faith. Testament of Faith is an enchantment. You can pay X for it to become an XX walled creature until end of turn. Strong card. Here comes the island. Are we going to see Cunning Wish at this point? Perhaps Breakthrough for 6 is also possible, allowing James to draw 4 cards. Island and 1, and the rest. Breakthrough. Here we go. X is equal to 6. James draws 4 cards. Cephalid Scout, Island, Swirling Sandstorm, Peak. Not what he wanted. Could have done better. Ends his turn. No doubt disappointed with that draw. Beloved Chaplain. Protection from creatures 1/1. Attacks with the Angel. Down to 10. At some point James is going to have to play his Scalpel Exis and his Cephalid Scout just to chump block against this Angel of Retribution. Plays Plains, Forest. In comes the Beloved Chaplain. No more attacking from the ground. He can just block. Beloved Chaplain also unblockable. Here's the Ether Burst. Can't play it because the Spellbane Centaur. Can't play Swirling Sandstorm, doesn't do anything. Peak's available. Cunning Wish is available. What are we going to see? Whatever happens, Phil wants to swing with this Angel of Retribution as much as possible. 2 more hits can be taken. Island is tapped. Second island tapped. Cephalid Scout comes in. Cephalid Scout here being used as likely a chump blocker, buying James some more time. Probably going to save the Ether Burst. That would allow for just better uses later on, combat tricks and such. Ends his turn. Passes back. Plains is drawn. Pops it in. 8 mana is probably where you want to stop. After that you can use it for discarding. Beloved Chaplain, Angel of Retribution, swing. Cephalid Scout chump blocks the Angel of Retribution. Cephalid Scout sacrificed in order to draw a card. Firebolt is drawn. Interesting. Island is tapped, Peak is played. Look at target player's hand. Draw a card. Sees the Chastise and the Terror's Faithful. At the moment, James is just trying to stabilise. Those don't really matter. Draws a Peak. Will he play the second Peak? Saves it. Phil plays the Terror's Faithful. I think forgets to draw a card. Oh, he did that at the start of the turn. This is still Phil's turn. Ends his turn. Now we're going to see the Peak. Or just pass. This is what he's debating. I'm just going to ask about damage from Beloved. Takes it. Good catch, me. Decides to play the Peak. Draws a Standstill. Also not really what he wanted. Draws an Ether Burst. Enough Ether Bursts to buy him some time. Enough Ether Bursts to potentially start Scalpel Accessing. By... no, Ether Burst is not going to work because of Spellbane Centaur. Firebolt really needs to be played on that Spellbane Centaur. Potentially flashing it back on the Beloved Chaplain. Interesting to see what could potentially happen here. James on 9. Beloved Chaplain representing a slow clock, but a clock nonetheless. Taps an island. What is going on? island from the table into the graveyard. Perhaps there's some dispute over whether that happened. Just having a look at the graveyard here. 2 islands. Not sure what... No. Goes on the attack. Sacrifices the island. Yes, gives himself Threshold. That's the Dreamwinder's ability. Taps out here. Probably a Swirling Sandstorm. Anoid Swarm Snapper. Tap blocks there. Doesn't matter. James just wants the Swirling Sandstorm. It is a sorcery, so he does have to wait. Main phase 2. I say he's going to Swirling Sandstorm. That's just my prediction. He might not. I would here. In it comes. Just the angel left. He can take another hit. Potentially. Ends his turn. James sitting pretty on 6 cards in hand. Phil with a Chastise, an Antuco Monastery, and 1 Angel of Retribution, 1 Testament of Faith. Much higher life total. In comes the angel. He could Ether Burst here. Might be worth going down to 4, just for the tempo. James probably just at the moment weighing up his mana costs, deciding whether to go down to 4. If he does go down to 4, it means that Phil can't straight up just replay the angel. He does tap the 2 for the Ether Burst. Returns it to his hand. What's Phil going to do? Plays the angel. Buys James a turn. Passes back to James. Untaps. Island. Pop it into play. Scalpel Exus? He has enough to Scalpel Exus and to Ether Burst. Taps an island. 3 more islands and a mountain. Here's the Scalpel Exus. He may have enough to Ether Burst, but is there going to be enough time? Phil draws a Plains. Phil, with the Chastise in hand, could just destroy the Scalpel Exus when it attacks. Nantuko Monastery. Plays it. Becomes a 4/4 green creature till end of turn. Attacks with the Angel of Retribution and the Nantuko. Could we see another Ether Burst? Blocks with the Scalpel Exus. Goes down to 4. Here's the Ether Burst, returning both of them to his hand. Good use of arrows there. We can see what's going on. Plays the Angel of Retribution. Ends his turn. Arcane Teachings. Standstill, Firebolt. Not enough red mana on the board to Arcane Teachings, ping, Firebolt, and then second Firebolt. Could he Arcane Teachings now, leave the ping on the board, wait till next turn, do the double Firebolt? That could destroy the Angel. That could bring this game back for James. There is a winning position. There is a winning line. Here comes something. Arcane Teachings. Onto the Scalpel Axis. 3. Should be 3-7. Yes, corrected. 3-7. Should end his turn here. This is the stabilization James has been looking for. Ends his turn. Next turn he can double Firebolt and ping on the Angel. Here's the Guided Strike. Target creature gains +1/+0, gains first strike till end of turn. Not going to be enough. Nantuko Monastery also available. Here it comes. Swings with both. Blocks there. Goes down to 4. We're in dangerous territory. End of turn, taps the Scalpel Axis, deals 1 damage to Nantuko Monastery, destroying it. Goodbye Monastery. Interesting position, interesting play, I didn't see that coming. Passes over to James. Most likely. Could play a Cunning Wish now if he wanted. Interesting piece of stabilization. 4 life. Here's the wish. What's he going to wish for? Could wish for the same thing you wished for last time. Would leave him the Firebolt. That was just 5 damage. Chastise, also still a possibility. Scalpel Axis does damage on the combat damage, so he can't Arcane Teachings to mill Phil, just in case you're wondering. Thermal Blast comes in, into the hand. Threshold is online, could deal 5 damage to target creature. Standstill and Thermal Blast a possibility. Thermal Blast first, obviously. Goes for the Firebolt play instead. 2 damage on that. Seems to be taken back. Is this the Thermal Blast instead? Interesting that he was allowed to do that, but this is a casual tournament. Thermal Blast hits. Swing with the Scalpel Axis? Potentially playing a Standstill. Here comes the Standstill. James has stabilized, now is the time for a Standstill. Hits the ending phase. I can't recall if he's seen the Chastise, but here's the Grisly Fate. Does Phil play the Grizzly Fate in order to trigger the Chastise. What am I saying? If Phil plays the Grizzly Fate, the Standstill would activate. Plays the Grizzly Fate. That's 4 bears. He could just walk around James for the last few points of life point damage. Standstill activated, 3 cards drawn. Ether Burst is one of them. How many Ether Bursts are in the graveyard? Scalp Alexis taps, does 1 damage to Phil. Cephalid Scout needs to find a way to stop these bears. He has Ether Burst, he has Firebolt. The bears can flash back though. He can do 2 damage to a bear, 2 damage again, and Ether Burst 2 of them. Enough mana on board for a Chastise? Yes. James perhaps wanting to leave the Ether Burst up in case the Scalp Alexis has something happen to it. Looks like an attack with the Scalp Alexis. Straight at Phil. Here comes Chastise. Ether Burst. Targeting Scalp Alexis, bear and bear. Looks like there were 2 Ether Bursts in the graveyard. Now we can Firebolt the 2 bears. Or we can play the Scalp Alexis. And 1 Firebolt, potentially. There's the Firebolt. Hit that bear. Okay. Ends his turn. Very interesting. Nantuko Disciple. Are we going to see a flashback Bear Storm? Here come the bears. Grizzly Fate flashed back. 5 bears in play. Is there anything James can do to stop these bears? Ending phase. Untaps. Draws Fiery Temper. What is that? 3 damage to target creature or player. Is it enough? Could destroy a bear with that. Could block 2 bears with Cephalid Scout and Scalp Alexis. It's not looking good. If 2 bears get through, it's all over. I don't think there's a way around this. Is there anything he can flash back? Just viewing his graveyard right now. He can flash back a Firebolt. Cephalid Scout has been played. Draws into a mountain. It is not looking good for James. Looks like there might be a strong victory here from Phil. It's been a grinding game, but we may find ourselves heading towards a deciding game here. Here comes the Scalp Alexis. Last ditch effort. Iron Shell Beetle, Plains, Forest, Forest. Scalp Alexis will be coming in again. Basking Rootwaller, Diligent Farmhand, Forest, Terra's Faithful. Down to 9. Second main phase. Not much you can do. Are we going to see the concession? Ends his turn. Phil swings with the bears. Finds a Chain Flinger. Not going to be good enough. And we see a concession there. Phil taking game 2. Those bears they just walk around you. There's so many bears, they'll just walk straight around you. Doesn't matter what you're doing, bears know their way around. Bears always know their way around, especially in high numbers. So it looks like James is ready to start the next game. Are we going to see anything from Phil here? James having the choice. First or second. Chain Flinger, a card that we haven't seen so far. Costs 3 in red, 2/2. Deals 1 damage to target creature or player. I see the players have started again. So you can look at that Chain Flinger on the right there if you want. Looks like Phil has Friends Mold into Sudden Strength, Terrace Faithful, Grisly Fate, and 4 lands. James deciding 4 lands, Peak, and 2 Swirling Sandstorms. Potentially not a keepable hand at either end. James regular mulligans, Ether Burst, Hydromorph, Gull, Cunning Wish, and 3 lands. Goes for it. Plays the Mountain. Phil's turn. Phil has kept his hand. Looks like it's going to be a slow game. In comes the island. Taps across. Basking Rootwaller. I might have been wrong on the slow game front. Here comes the B to the R. James draws a mountain, plays a mountain, ends his turn. Basking Rootwaller. Phil drawing a Genesis. Three damage to James there. Ends his turn. Cunning Wish. What does he wish for? Is there a creature he can draw that can stop the Rootwaller? Or potentially some damage? Lava Dart. 1 damage to target creature or player with a flashback. Plays the island. Are we going to see the Lava Dart? Yep. Hits the Basking Rootwaller, kills it. Goes to the graveyard. Ends his turn. Nantuko Disciple. In comes the Disciple. Ends his turn. Excuse me, this has been a long session. Plays a 5th land. In comes the Gull, 3/3 flyer. Pretty good. Draws a Plains. Plays a Plains. Taps 4/5. Untaps. Attacks with the Nantuko Disciple. James goes down to 15. Plays the Genesis. 4/4 Incarnation. Here's the Mountain. Plays a Peak. What I'm going to start doing now is whenever there's a relevant card, I'm going to hover over it so that it goes large. Phil draws a Sudden Strength. No, wait. That's not true. Cephalid Scout. James draws a Cephalid Scout. Peak there. Just looking at the hands, that's why I thought that was the case. James clearly a big fan of these Cephalid Scouts. 1/1 flyers, sacrifice a land, draw a card. Can get you out of some tight spots, and can put some lands in your graveyard for that threshold. Ending phase. Untaps, draws a Blessed Orator. We've seen this. Other creatures you control get +0/+1. Attacks with the Disciple and the Genesis. Blocks there. Tapping those. Sudden Strength, potentially. Here comes the Sudden Strength. +3/+3. Ether Burst. On the Disciple. Sudden Strength. Fizzles, no card is drawn. 4 damage from the Genesis. Plains is played. Or just shuffled. I should really pay attention. Island comes in. James probably not best pleased about having 2 Cephalid Scouts in hand. Is he going to try and race with the Hydromorph Gull? Not that he would win that race. Here comes the Scout. Taps the Hydromorph Gull for the attack. 3 damage to Phil. Phil draws a Forest. Here's the Hydromorph Gull. Protects your creatures with a countering ability. Here's the Cephalid Scout. Phil attacks with the Genesis. Blocked there by the Cephalid Scout. Taps, sacrifices a land, draws a card. It's a Firebolt. Forest, forest, plains, plains. Nantuko Disciple comes back in. Nantuko Disciple here a 2/2. Pay green and tap. Target creature gets +2/+2 until end of turn. Very versatile card. Often stalling a bald state. Cephalid Scout coming in. Mountains tapped. Here comes the Firebolt. Straight on the Nantuko Disciple. 2 damage. Send it to the graveyard. James now on Threshold. What's he going to do? He's got nothing in his hand. A couple of activated abilities sitting on the field there. 2 in a blue, sacrifice a land, draw a card. Here comes the Gull. 3 damage. Field goes down to 14. Ending phase. Untaps. Second Thoughts. How locked up is this game? Here comes the Genesis. Straight block. Block and a tap, perhaps? Nope. It's down to 7. We saw similar things happening last game. Not with a hand this empty. Here's the Blessed Orator. Genesis now a 4/5. Here's the Blessed Orator for you to look at. Swirling Sandstorm. 5 damage to each creature without flying. Exactly what James needed at this point. This would wipe out Phil's side of the board. Puts the island in. Taps 3, probably for the Cephalid Scout's ability, sacks the island, draws another island. Unsatisfying. Here comes the Sandstorm. 5 damage to each creature without flying. Genesis, Blessed Orator, wiped out. Genesis with the ability, if it's in your graveyard, you may pay 2 in green. If you do, return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. Genesis could be coming back. Untapped, upkeep. Does he pay for the Genesis's ability? Doesn't have the mana to bring it to his hand and play it this turn. Does have the life points to be able to play around with that concept though. Hallowed Healer comes in, Genesis' ability is not played. Terror's Faithful comes in, gains 4 life. Still not flying. But Hallowed Healer slowing things down. James draws into an Aquamoeba here. Not exactly what he wanted to see. Still a reasonable card. James playing lots of lands here in order to play Cephalid Scout's ability. Plays the Aquamoeba. Nothing in hand to discard. Taps 3. Sacrifice an island, draws a card. Mountain. Again, unsatisfying. Here come the flyers. Sacrifice the mountain, lava dart on the Hallowed Healer. Very good choice. Fell down to 10. Untaps his permanents. Is he thinking about bringing the Hallowed Healer back with the ability of the Genesis? He's close to a Threshold Grisly Fate. What he could do is not do that. Allow James to come in with the Hydromorphic Gull and the Cephalid Scout, play the Second Thoughts, go to Threshold, then the turn after, hit with the Grisly Fate. Or he could bring the Hallowed Healer back in, slow the board state, gum it up. What are we going to see? Draws a card. It's a forest. Plays the forest. Ends his turn. Ends his turn. He's going for the Second Thoughts Grisly Fate play. Violent Eruption. 4 damage divided as you choose among any number of target creatures or players. Straight on the Terror's Faithful? Unlikely. Can always be brought back for 4 life a turn. which is about as much damage as the Cephalid Scout and Hydromorphic Gull do on their own. So just to explain the tournament we do, it's a Odyssey sealed currently. At the end of each match, each player may trade up to 4 cards with their opponent. So slowly these decks are getting a little better. They're not constructed standard, but the synergies come in. As you can see, both these players' decks working relatively well. Good cards, strong colours together. James now with the Hydromorphic Gull, Aquamoeba, Cephalid Scout. Thinking about what to do with that Violent Eruption. Needs to find a way to discard it. Has that with Aquamoeba. Has the Mountain as well. Could play that to play it outright. Phil waiting for an attack in order to play Second Thoughts. Here's the attack. Here comes the Second Thoughts, hopefully. Second Thoughts giving him Threshold, turning his Grisly Fate into something nasty. Here's the Second Thoughts on the Hydromorphic Gull, exiling it. Sacrificing itself to counter that. Doesn't matter. Doesn't get to draw a card. Again, doesn't matter to the strategy. James here could discard Violent Eruption with the Aquamoeba. Plays the Mountain. Could play the Violent Eruption outright on Terra's Faithful. Paying 5 here. To flash back the Firebolt. On Phil. Interesting manoeuvre. Violent Eruption here. Could hit Phil for 4, leaving him on 3 life. Here's Grisly Fate. 4 bears coming in. James perhaps hoping for some burn. Here are the bears. Ends his turn. Ether Burst. What's the play? Violent Eruption could destroy 2 of the bears. Ether Burst could also destroy another. Violent Eruption to Phil's face could leave him on 3. Phil down to 6. Virtually on 2 with the Violent Eruption. We will wait to see what happens. Phil untaps his permanents, decides on a potential Genesis here. Could return a creature from his graveyard to his hand. Let's have a look at what's in his graveyard together. Nantuko Disciple, Basking Rootwaller, Blessed Orator, Genesis or Hallowed Healer, all of which could come back to his hand and all of which could be played in the same turn. What are we going to see? Other players, of course, don't know what's in each other's hands. Phil completely unawares of the violent eruption and the ether burst. Chastise, which we haven't mentioned yet. Destroy target attacking creature, you gain life equal to its power. Swings with the bears. Ether burst. Targeting that bear and that bear. Bears are destroyed. Acromeaver blocks that bear. James potentially taking 3 here. Bears flash back. Is James going to make the gamble with the violent eruption? Straight to Phil's face in the hopes of drawing some burn. He could draw any one of his burn spells. If he plays the violent eruption now, he has a chance to win the game with that play. Does he think he can stabilize without it? That's the question. I, for one, am doubtful. If he plays the burn, he has the potential to win the game if he draws another burn spell. He has lots of burn spells. Taps it out. Taps the last mountain? Is he flashing something back that I'm not aware of? Ooh, tries to draw a card. Scalpel Axis. So we know what the outcome would have been. Violent Eruption. Ooh. Swirling Sandstorm will destroy everything on the board. Except for the Cephalid Scout. Here it comes. Swirling Sandstorm. Wipes the bears out. And Terra's Faithful. And Acromeaver. Gone. Acromeaver also gone. Ends his turn. Phil on 5. Virtually on 1. If he takes 1 more damage, he has lost. Here comes Terra's Faithful back to his hand. Plays Terra's Faithful, gains 4 life. Is the game slipping away from James? Scalpel Axis in hand, able to be played. Here comes an island. Island comes in. Chastise in hand. Cephalid Scout. 1 damage. Takes Phil down to 8. Scalpel Axis, if it starts manoeuvring, could close the game up quickly. Here's the Scalpel Axis. Ends his turn. Plains is drawn. What's he going to do? Sit and wait with the Chastise? Potentially destroying the Scalpel Axis? Basking Root Waller has been drawn. Basking Root Waller has been played. Strong creature. Ends his turn. Taking a risk on the Scalpel Axis, potentially Cephalid Scout. Dreamwinder has been drawn. 4-3. Dreamwinder can't attack unless defending player controls an island. 4-3 Defender. Can attack if you sacrifice an island. The attack with the Scalpelexis would end in tears for James. Phil messaging us complaining about his bears. We as viewers got over the bears a long time ago. Here's the attack. Here's the chastise. Targeting the Scalpelexis. Destroys it. Phil gains 1 life. Loses 1 life from the Cephalid Scout. Back down to 8. Violent Eruption needs to come into play now. Or the Dreamwinder. Good defense. Good defense. Is Phil going to use Genesis at this point to bring back a creature? Again, let's have a look at what he's got. Nantuko Disciple is a potential. Genesis itself, also a potential. Toys with the idea, puts it in his hand, puts it back in the graveyard. Blessed Orator might get the job done. Nantuko Disciple in the hand. Is it going back in the graveyard? Looks like it's coming into play. Here's the Nantuko Disciple. Basking Rootwaller and Terrace Faithful. The turn is ended. Pass it across. Untaps his permanents. Are we going to see a card being drawn? Phil draws a card. What is going on? Did Phil never draw a card? He never drew a card. Plays his beloved Chaplain. Island is drawn. Violent Eruption now could destroy the Nantuko Disciple and the beloved Chaplain. James can't let the beloved Chaplain live. It presents a 4-turn clock for him. Protection from creatures means it cannot be blocked by creatures. Needs to leave the board if James is to survive. Phil's sitting on a lot of creatures here. Can pump the beloved Chaplain with the Nantuko Disciple, presenting a 2-turn clock. James, of course, can destroy both of them with his Violent Eruption that he was hoping he could close out the game with. May need it to stabilize. What are we going to see? Big decision being made. He could also use the Cephalid Scout's ability to attempt to draw another card. Already has an island in his hand. Looks like that's what we're going to see. Island goes to the graveyard, draws a Chain Flinger. Chain Flinger does 1 damage to target creature or player with Threshold, can repeatedly deal 2 damage to target creature or player. This is a way of placing a threat on Phil. Here comes the Chain Flinger into play. 2/2 Beast for 4. Next turn, it can start blowing things up. Mainly Phil. It needs to be able to do that, though. Phil can start Ah, no, Phil can't pump the Beloved Chaplain because it has protection from Nantuko Disciple's ability. I was wrong on that part. If you were screaming and hitting your monitor at the time as I was saying that, I'm sorry. I realised the error of my ways. Beloved Chaplain has protection from all creatures, not just James's. I think he's deciding whether to attack with the Cephalid Scout. Looks like he does. Was that unwise? Potentially. Phil untaps his permanence, considers a Genesis. Both players on low life don't want to make too many risks. A 4-4 would help in this situation. Would cancel with the Dreamwinder. James unable to use Chain Flinger on Phil and Violent Eruption also on Phil. The red mana is just not there. Hallowed Healer brought from the graveyard to the hand. A Plains is drawn. What are we going to see? Here's the Hallowed Healer. Can prevent 2 damage. That would counter the Chain Flinger. James just waiting for Phil to get down to 4 life so we can finish him off with the Violent Eruption. Could do that next turn. Chain Flinger and Cephalid Scout. He'd need to be able to survive another turn. Unless he draws a mountain, in which case he has the game closed up. Phil deciding what to do. Two creatures in. If he attacks with everything, the Beloved Chaplain can't be blocked. Probably the Rootwaller and the Disciple would be blocked. 2 damage to James would result. Rootwaller probably would trade with the Dreamwinder. Nantuko Disciple probably trades with the Chain Flinger. Terra's Faithful and Beloved Chaplain would be let through. Probably a good idea to attack with the Chaplain no matter what. If you were to swing with all of them, like I said, 2 damage to James, and we'd lose 4 creatures from the board. Here comes Rootwaller and Chaplain, hoping to trade with the Dreamwinder or the Chain Flinger. Threatening lethal unless the Rootwaller's blocked. The Rootwaller needs to be blocked, blocked by the Dreamwinder. Phil needs to pump that if that trade's going to occur. There we go. Also pumps the Rootwaller with the Disciple. James down to 3. Plays the Hallowed Healer. If James draws a mountain, he's won. It's a mountain. Plays the mountain. Needs to attack with the Cephalid Scout for 1. Chain Flinger for 2. Here comes the Cephalid Scout. 1. Chain Flinger for 2. And the Violent Eruption for 4. That should be game. That looks like it is game. I'll just ask if that is game, because I don't want to leave us hanging. That looks like it's game to me. Let me just check the graveyard. Nothing with flashback. Alright, thank you for joining us here on this massive recording of this massive final. That is game. James has won 2-1. I was told this pretty much represents the finals. This might mean that James wins our little Odyssey tournament here. I've yet to get the details on that, but thank you for joining us, and I'll see you next time.